First of all, thank you very much, everybody, for coming out. It's a pretty exciting meeting tonight. We're here to discuss the future of 550 King Street, or the potential future of 550 King Street. It's a property that's been occupied by IBM for a number of years. There's been a lot of questions over the years in my several years on the select board, and I'm sure my colleagues can say the same. It's always been something that we've always said, you know, what's going on with IBM, what's going on with IBM, and you know, with COVID and a lot of folks working remotely, the questions come up even more so from residents and developers alike. And so IBM did something that we didn't expect to happen as quickly as it did as a tenant of 550 King Street. And so we're kind of left with an empty 500,000 square feet of office space, Class A office space, use quotes with the Class A part. And you know, we've got limited abilities to control what happens there. There's been a number of developers that have worked with the company, CBRE, that is marketing the property. And so tonight we're here to discuss some possibilities for what could happen at 550, and I think it's a great opportunity for the community, and I'm glad to see as many people here as we have. Hopefully we can get a lot more of a broadcast. I'll leave it to Anthony and Saldi, our town administrator, to tee it up a little bit better than I just did.
So thank you, everybody. As Chuck said, that when we first saw that sign at 550 King Street about 500,000 square foot feet available, it was something that was very much of a concern to the select board. And they tasked me with find out what's going on over there, and that's what I did. So we set up a meeting with Hudson Group, which is the owners of that property, as well as with their marketing company, which is called a company called CBRE. So early on, we asked that the town be kept informed weekly, and I had conference calls with them every week for a number of weeks. And once they decided that they were going to market the property, they informed us and said that people would be calling, or potential developers would be calling and asking about what the town is looking for on that particular site. With that, we had a number of calls. We had some small little sidebar meetings, and there was one developer that kept calling, kept asking, was very much interested in working with the town, and more so than the other companies. I got a call, and I got a call from a lawyer. What I was really impressed is that we got the call from Sal Lupoli, who is the president and CEO of Lupoli Companies, and what was really interesting and exciting about Sal was that he was a local. He lives in Chelmsford. He has 3 different developments going on in Haverhill, Lowell, and Lawrence. We actually got an opportunity, a small contingency, to tour those properties, and it was very impressive, very impressive. And Sal was equally as impressive because he was very much wants to work with the town and what the town wants to see for that development, for that site. Certainly it's an important piece with form-based code that was the planning board worked on. And it's also very important to the future of the Littleton Common. We've talked for a number of years about the revitalization of Littleton Common, and this is exactly the opportunity that can really kickstart that. A project like this obviously is very contingent upon sewer, and we've met with Nick Lawler and Chairman Carr, and which we all know that project's moving forward, but that's an important part of developing that site. So I'm really excited about having that local person like Sal, like we had with Point and CM Park, and it was a great partnership. So it's exciting that right now Sal has signed a P&S, which still there's more to go in that process, but he's doing his due diligence, and we're glad you're here tonight and welcome you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Oh, what a great opportunity to be here. I don't think I've ever had a problem projecting my voice without a microphone. So with that, thanks for the opportunity to be in front of you. First of all, I'd like to introduce my daughter Mary, and my wife Katie's here. Mary and Katie are a big part of the business. you know, we're very local, and if I could just give you a little background and tell you about myself, because I think that's super important. You know, raised in Chelmsford, Mass, not too far from here. I'm a football coach there for 17 years. I understand and have the same feelings that this board might have, because I sat on my own school committee board, and that's certainly a interesting board to sit on, and I sat on that board for 3 years. Just gave it up not too long ago. And I think it's super important to be part of the fabric of the community. If you look at every one of our construction projects, our projects that we manage, own, and operate, we become part of the fabric of the community. I think that's really important. And if you do a little research on us, you'll see that it's not just a developer that comes into your community, creates something of value, and then exits in 24 months for double-digit growth. You've heard of all those stories, and you've heard of all those programs that are out there. I think if you look at our background as the Lupoli family, Lupoli Companies, you see commitment, you see longevity. Every project that we have, we own and operate. Some of our projects we've owned and operated for over 30 years. In particular, some of the larger projects like Lawrence, Massachusetts, like Haverhill, Massachusetts, like Lowell, Massachusetts. We've been in those projects for, in some instances, for over 20 years, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal because, you know, if you want to find an organization, you know where to go because they're in that community. You know, it's not terribly difficult to get in touch with myself or my Vice President of Real Estate, Jerry Lynn Darcy, who is in the front row, who has been with the organization for a dozen years. Certainly Ricky Freiberg from Tech Engineering, Brian O'Connor from Cube 3, who helped develop the point in your community, and also Matteo Zingalis, who is also one of the architects and some of the ideas that were created here today. So, you know, why am I in front of you today? Well, why did I pick your community? Or why did I look at it? Because I just look at that opportunity that you have in your community, which is right off the highway, literally about 7 or 8 seconds from the highway. I look at it as a wonderful opportunity to create a mixed-use development. I think, and I say it respectfully in a very humble way, I think the days of those big buildings like IBM has today, I think those days are gone, especially as a result of COVID. Being in the business for so long, we have millions of square feet that we own, operate, and manage. I think that's really important. There's not a buffer out there that, you know, comes between us and the town. We manage the real estate. Our employees, we have about 1,000 employees. Our employees work in the projects that we have. So when I looked at those 2 buildings and I looked at 500,000 square feet in 2 buildings, I know how challenging that is going to be to revitalize. You know, we looked at this project and said, you know, will other developers come in here and look to scrape it? There's some different zoning over there that allows some things that it's not in our wheelhouse, but, you know, potentially, you know, distribution and things like that. That's actually not what we're interested in. We're interested in a mixed-use development that creates a revitalization with that town common, right? How do we create something that the community wants that's walkable, right? Walk over to the town commons, enjoy some of the assets of your community, and also enjoy some of the assets that are just over the bridge. I think a project that we could do over there would complement very nicely Mr. Pard's point that he's been so successful and been so passionate about. And we'd like to be equally passionate, have passion in your community as a result of this opportunity. But we just don't look at like these 2 old buildings and say, how do we just put lipstick on this and, you know, try to create it or try to subdivide it and give up floors. It's just not going to work. And I think what's going to happen, in my opinion, is if something doesn't happen soon, these buildings will come a little antiquated, and we all know what happens when property is not being maintained or being serviced or being occupied. You know, things start to fall and kind of, to some extent, you know, deteriorate, you know, and that's a really big piece of real estate. That's 40 acres in your town that, you know, as of within a few months, it's going to be totally vacated, right? There'll be an exit, and that town, that location will be, you know, which is in the center of your town, will be something that is super important. So what did we come up with? Well, we know this. We know that there has to be a certain amount of zoning to take place in there, and we introduced ourselves to Anthony and had the opportunity to meet everybody on the board and invited them to see what we've done at some of our locations. And that's really important, right? What's super important is to be able to see and touch and understand projects that are like. Now, I would certainly, with great humility, never compare one community to the other, but I will tell you, we've had the benefit of being in some fabulous communities, right? Like, we're in the poorest city in the state, Lawrence, Massachusetts. We're proud of that, right? We've gone into a community that had 3 million square feet of abandoned buildings. I'm talking about buildings with no roof on them. And today we're proud to tell you that as a result of that, they're totally renovated. It took us over 20 years to renovate it. And those buildings have now 5,000 people that work in it. But it's different than just having these 2 massive buildings like you have in your community. We went after small local entrepreneurs that wanted 2,000 and 3,000 square feet, and we created this village, so to speak. We've added new product to that. We've tried to create a balance, and every step of the way, we've done something that not a lot of developers do, right? We sat down with the local boards, we invited the inspectional services, we said, what are the things that you think you need in your community? And you can't be, and I say it once again with great humility, you can't be as successful as our organization if you don't communicate and have that kind of a dialogue. And that's what we've done, right? If you go to Lowell, Massachusetts, we took one of their oldest buildings, most abandoned buildings, a building that was a symbol of blight, and we had a vision, and we presented it to the state of Massachusetts. We were able to get an audience with the governor, and we were able to show him what really TOD can look like, transit-oriented development. As a result of that, he created this partnership with the train station, and today you have one of the most successful programs in Lowell as a work, live, play component. We created new jobs over there, brought in doctors' offices, and brought in small accountants and small real estate companies to create this vibrant fabric that's all intertwined. And it's as a result of talking to the community. If you go over to Haverhill, Massachusetts, we did something that was really fun and different over there. Once again, Haverhill, gateway city, one of the oldest cities north of Boston in the state of Massachusetts. We went over there and we sat down with the community, and the community told us, we want something different. We come from the land of brick and mortar, Sal, these old mill buildings, but we're on the river. We want something different. So after listening to the mayor, after listening to the selectmen and the city council and some of the other boards, we built something that, I think doesn't exist in the entire state, right? We built a 10-story building, all glass and steel, overlooking the Merrimack River with 42 market rate apartments, some of the most beautiful apartments in the state, period, bar none. Also, we created a culinary school. We created a culinary school with the help of the governor's office, with the help of a local college. And today we have a college, and we're blessed enough to, my daughter Mary, who runs the foundation, also my son Sal Jr., who will be here, but he's at Benton University playing some football on campus right now. But those 2 individuals that kind of work on the foundation, we're proud to tell you that that school exists today because of that fabric, because of that joint partnership. And that college is serving kids that can't afford to go to large universities. So they go to these community schools, they get their certificate, and then they enter the hospitality business. Super successful, super exciting. So, and then the last one, as I alluded to a little earlier, was the River Rock Properties. And without the team of the people that are here today, and just to tell you about the team, they're local to you, right? They've been in your community for a number of years and helped create some of the assets in your community. We went to those people, right? Thoughtful engineers that understand what's important, thoughtful architects that understand what the community is all about, right down to how we see this opportunity, right? This is over 40 acres, and I think, my opinion, my one voice, I think you have to be incredibly thoughtful of what's going to go there, because you're already zoned to do a bunch of things that other developers don't need any permission, you're just going to do it. We didn't want to take that approach. We wanted to say, well, how do we integrate with the commons? We created this master plan, and this plan has some ideas of what this King Street Common might look like, various small shops or various small entrepreneurs that are creating this connection with the common, this walkable kind of program. So there's a retail office component. There's the existing 2 towers. I don't know really what the future of those 2 towers are. I think there's an opportunity, and think if we all collectively work hard, I think there's an opportunity to bring different kinds of businesses into your community. Maybe the days of big offices are gone, but maybe there's new robotics or manufacturers or people that are on cutting edge that might be the next wave that want value of being on 495. You have a tremendous asset in your town. It's called 495, and as people expand, people do not now want to go to Boston anymore, and how do they find these little gems? And I feel Littleton is one of those gems that fit into it because it's perfectly located. What's so interesting about this project is you don't have to travel through your community. We don't have these hustles and bustles and all of these people because we want to create jobs. We don't have them coming through the community. We have them coming off the highway, and in 7 seconds they're in the parking lot, and when they exit 7 seconds later, they're out. You presently have now I call it a shuttle service. You see the signs up in the parking lot. You actually have people parking there and they shuttle them down to the train station. I think that's another great asset. I think we can continue that partnership. So, what I've seen is we've had great success over the past 30 plus years of creating and revitalizing properties that nobody else knew what to do with. Properties that needed a lot of time and energy. I am not your developer if you think we need to come in and make a big splash and put up a lot of fancy stuff and exit. That's not my background. My background is crystal clear from a number of years of what we do. But I think what's so important too is our organization. We just don't, and this is really unique, right? And I say it with great humility. We're the 5th largest developer in the state, and we're very quiet about it. Like, we don't advertise. We don't go after businesses. If you came to us and you wanted us to build a building for you, that's actually not what we do. We go after specific tenants that have a need in certain communities. Once we find those tenants, we then go and build the buildings, and we retain those buildings and own and operate them for a number of years, for at least 15 years for that tenant. So that creates very, very much of a vertically integrated organization, right? We not only do all the construction, we not only hire the engineers, we hire the people to build the buildings, but we also manage and we also service our tenants. And I think that's really unique and different. There's not a lot of people out there. I think there's a lot of opportunity with this site yet to be discussed. I think this is the first step in something like this. But I do know that this property is a valuable asset as it relates to the town. Not so much as the asset itself. The value is what someone's willing to pay for it. But the value to your community is certainly valuable because you want to make sure what goes in there complements the town of Littleton and creates jobs and creates the right program. I think if you look, and I know for a fact, if you look at our projects, you'll see that thoughtful kind of approach in everything we do. But I think what's really important is you hear from much smarter people than me about visioning and opportunity here. You'll hear from our engineer and our architect potentially, and certainly our vice president of real estate. But if you want to know what we see an opportunity as long as we listen to the people and listen to the boards. And right now, there's an opportunity to paint this canvas the right way with a developer that is in for everything for the long run, as opposed to a developer that wants to cut this up and not partner with the right people over there. I think every aspect that's on the board today, we are in that business. We're in the medical space business. We brought up some of the biggest names in the world when we talk about the Mass General Hospital. We brought them all the way up from Boston into the Merrimack Valley, one of the first times ever they did that, and we're super excited about that. When you talk about education, we've merged and created relationships with some of the biggest universities, from MIT to UMass to Northern Essex to local organizations, local schools. When you talk about entrepreneurs, we have over 200 local entrepreneurs from the state of Massachusetts that have either one job they've created themselves or they've been, as a result, created hundreds of jobs because of their ideas. And we're proud of that. We're proud of helping those entrepreneurs work. You talk about energy, that's another cluster we went after. We have some of the best energy companies that we started that helped be created in Massachusetts. And really the history of energy as you talk about solar and some of these dynamic programs. Just to let you know how we think about the environment, I think that's really important. We have, in the poorest city in the state of Massachusetts, we have the largest solar panel system in the entire state, and we have the largest geothermal system in the entire state in any mixed-use project. And we did that in the poorest city. And by the way, we don't farm it out, we don't lease our roofs, we own it all, and we are able to give some of that savings back to our tenants and to our people that live at our development. So if you want to talk about some of the programs that we do, we like to believe that we're some of the green leaders in the state of Massachusetts when it comes to mixed use development. I think that's super important. We're super sensitive to that. It's really expensive, and when people first said to us, why are you making that kind of an investment? Because we're buying old kind of people. As I told you, we own real estate upwards of 30 years, and certainly our larger developments are going on 21 and 22 years. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, but I think what would be appropriate for me right now is certainly thank all the members of the boards here, some of the people I've met, just to let you know they've received us with open arms. They came to my facilities, all of them. They've toured all of my locations. They really peeled back that onion to see what our organization was all about, and we welcome them, and we're happy about that. So I want to thank, the selectmen, the planning board, the zoning board, the inspectional services, the fire department, the police department, all of these people that we had an interaction with has been very warming, and I appreciate that. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ricky Freiberg. I'd be happy to answer any questions they can, and I just want to thank my wife and my daughter for being here and supporting us.
Good evening. My name is Rick Freiberg from TDC. I'm the civil engineer for the project. I'm here presenting along with Sal and the rest of the design and development team. I think I'd like to start by echoing our appreciation, not only to the public, to town staff, and to the boards, because it's unusual to be able to schedule a hearing as quickly as this one got scheduled for multiple boards. And to us, it kind of speaks to the engagement and the involvement that the town of Littleton expresses towards potential development projects that are going to be good for the town. We believe that this is a beginning of a community conversation. We believe that it's happening at sort of the perfect moment in time. So Sal entered into agreement on the property just a few weeks ago, and we've had some early discussions. And whenever he enters into an agreement, the first thing we do is a due diligence analysis, and we research anything we can get our hands on. We look up newspaper articles, town meeting notes, zoning changes, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that jumped off the page to us about Littleton and staff and the boards and the public was that Littleton is a town that really seems to use everything in its tool belt to get the job done. We've seen the updated master plan. We've seen the form-based code. We've seen the 40R district. We've seen the number of overlays that exist in town. And so for us, it makes us feel very comfortable to come forward and have this conversation in the public because we understand that this seems to be a town that really understands development, and they understand how to use the different tools that are available to help make sure that the residents of Littleton are getting the best possible developments. We feel that's important because there are opportunities certainly to maximize on the assets that Littleton has. We look at Littleton Commons, we look at the point like Sal mentioned, we look at access to 495, and we view this as a great opportunity to reposition this parcel that'll serve Littleton well into the next 50 years or so. We are going to kind of echo a little bit of what Sal said about the site that's there today. It's an expanse parking lot. It's two very large buildings. We believe that the days of the 500,000 square foot single tenant office complex are probably past us by. We see that kind of space, and because of its proximity to the other assets in town, do not believe it's a good candidate site for something like a trucking center, a distribution center, or something like that. We view it as an opportunity to really expand on what's been done already in town and to continue to help revitalize Littleton Common. I think, from our research and from looking through the things that have been passed as part of zoning, we believe that this development, like a lot of the legacy malls or retail centers or large office complexes, mixed-use type of development is the best way and most sustainable way to redevelop this property so it's sustainable for the future. We have prepared a number of handouts, but I know those will have to be spliced into the presentation. But we sort of see the site, and we're very early in the process. We've only been at it for a few weeks, but we sort of see the site sort of developing to four sort of distinct areas that are interconnected and tied together, but have their own separate sort of identities. So this first slide that you see here is an idea, and it's just the beginning, a conversation starter, if you will, for the area of the site that abuts King Street. And today, this area is comprised of a parking lot and a reserved parking area that's currently just sort of a grass panel. This is where we view really activating King Street. We view this area as a place where there's service type amenities, doctor's offices, a place to get ice cream, a coffee, possibly civic uses with a lot of green space. As we go to the next slide, you'll start to see some of the really New England style architecture. And what we're trying to do is borrow from the form-based code that was put in place for this area, looking at some of those design standards. All of the buildings are up at the street with parking behind. We've tried to capitalize on some of the character of the surrounding neighborhood, some of the older style architecture. But you'll also notice that we go to the next slide, preservation of the stone walls that are out there, introducing some landscaping to soften things. You see the red umbrellas, the outdoor seating, green space areas that are developed around these buildings. And the goal here is to create that sort of village feel, village atmosphere at the street level and activate this part of King Street so that it's a natural connection to Littleton Common, which we see as sort of a really nice marriage between the two. On the next slide, please. And so that area that we're just describing is highlighted in orange, and King Street, just oriented right in the plan. King Street is running left to right across the bottom of the screen. 495 is running across the top of the screen, and Route 119 is running on the left side of the screen. So that's the first area of the site. We view that as sort of like the face of the site, the face of the property, the heart of the village, if you will, that we're looking to create as part of this mixed-use development. I think the second part of the project that's important to identify is some of that existing character that is present on site today, and that's the telehouse and the surrounding green space that's around it. There's a beautiful park that's there. The telehouse is a nice property. And in our mind, we look at that and say that's an asset that serves us well and is sort of an interface with the town common. And our plan is to preserve that space the way that it is. That's sort of the second sort of area of the site. The third area of the site is in the top right, which Sal alluded to. Those are the two existing IBM buildings. And what we call the wing, which is off to the right or the east, which is currently a parking lot. We view that as sort of a commercial zone. We're not real clear yet, just a couple weeks in, how we'll adaptively reuse and reconfigure those buildings to work for something that will carry into the future, but that's something Sal's an expert in. He talked about developing 3 million square feet of mill space that really nobody knew what to do with. 500,000 should be easy. And then feeding the whole thing and creating, tying together that village atmosphere. On the top left area of the site here is a future residential area. And we see that as being primarily multifamily, possibly a mix of different unit types in terms of, we're considering senior housing, market rate housing, affordable housing, all those things are considerations. Right now, that part of the site is not zoned for that, and that's part of the reason for this early community engagement. We're at this, what I would describe as pre-master plan level right now, where it's really just kind of trying to think of what's best for the property here for the long term. Where might these kind of things lay out on the site, and how do they relate to each other? And so what we're trying to do in this area of the site, right now that area, for those who are familiar, is a large parking area for IBM. It's the closest part of the site, aside from the telehouse, to the common. And an important part of creating this village atmosphere is really the walkability and the connectivity of things. If you want to activate the street level, you need people walking around, and to have people walking around, it needs to be residential close by, and needs to be walking distance and well connected. And so our thought with proposing residential in this area was that it would not only feed that what we're calling King Street Commons in the front of the site, but also feed and support the businesses, the local businesses that are already surrounding the common today, and also across the bridge to the north over at the corner. So that's sort of our very first cut at space planning and trying to imagine what's possible on the site. Like I said, it's because of the hard work that's been done, because of the research that we've conducted and found that these boards have been able to accomplish some great things with zoning, that we feel comfortable coming and having this conversation in public. We think that because of your activity and because of your engagement, we will together formulate a vision that's sort of in the highest and best use for this site, and it'll serve as an asset for Littleton for a long time to come. So we're excited to begin that conversation and develop this vision together. I think with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions. Aside from myself, also Brian O'Connor and Matteo Zingales are here from Q3. So if there are questions about architecture and whatnot, but we wanted to present this to you. These are early thoughts, conversation starters. It was done the last couple of weeks, and we know it's a longer process ahead, but we're excited to start this conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. So, I don't know if any of the board members have any questions for Sal, Rick, or Brian, Mateo. Go out to the boards first.
Do we need to go up to the podium, or should we move that out of the way now?
If you speak really loudly, you can speak from the seat.
Okay, I just, yeah, okay.
Yeah, if you want to, Rick, just slide a little bit so we can block the strong like a bull.
Thank you. How's that?
Makes us plunder. Thoughts?
My first thought is actually, since so much of this will be before the planning board, not our board, we're happy to be co-hosting it, and I wonder if there's initial thoughts from our planning board chair or any of the members that are here on what we've had.
Sure, I'll start. The planning board has been engaged since Sal was interested in the property. We've met a few times with him. We went on the tour of Lawrence and April. Very impressed with Sal's commitment to working in the community, being part of the community. I think Littleton's been lucky. We've had 40 years of IBM, of office buildings. Every year we worry what's going to happen here. I think the roosters, as you put it, have finally come home to roost. Office buildings are, big office buildings are a thing of the past. Everyone's going to mixed use. I think we made that clear when we met with Sal that we were very interested in putting a mixed use into the common. It's a great place to put housing. It's a great place to start working on revitalizing the common, using our form-based coding. Hopefully, maybe a little bit of commercial space out there, a little bit of R&D or something out there, which obviously nobody knows what that's going to be. So the first time I met with and saw the whole thing, I was excited because we're at a crossroads right now between revitalizing the common, what's going on with Northern Bank, with this. I don't think we could be better placed to work on expanding what's there and getting something nice, something that residents in the town are going to be proud of. It's going to have walkability, it's going to have a lot of amenities that we don't have now. And we'll just have to see what the balance is going to be. I think that's what's before us now is the balance, how much housing, how much retail space, how much commercial space, and that's, I'm looking forward to meeting, having Sal come to our planning board meeting. I think you're meeting Monday with us. I think it is, isn't it Monday?
Well, that would be with you, Ed.
I don't keep your schedule
I think we have a
anymore.
meeting time on Monday, 16th. We have a meeting
Hope you were going to the beach.
Well, we're out here on Monday. Anyway, I think this is a great opportunity for the town of Littleton and a great chance to move forward from what we've had for the past 40 years. I'll leave that for right now and see what the rest of the board has to say.
Well, you guys are formulating thoughts. I'm just going to jump in. One of the comments that Rick just made was highest and best, and that's something that's been coming to mind with me throughout this entire process is, okay, what are we going to do here? And any site that becomes available, what's the highest and best use? What's going to be the most beneficial for our residents, for the taxpayers, for the community as a whole, for the commercial base? So you mentioned walkability, and that there's other businesses are going to drive traffic to existing businesses and vice versa. So I like the fact that you addressed that right up front. And we're looking at highest and best and doing whatever the blend is, the mix is, and whatever we kind of feel is going to be most palatable to our community. So I very much appreciate you highlighting that and presenting it the way that you all did collectively.
Well, I have one more point. Right now, where we are with this is where we were with the point 10 years ago. The point wasn't going to be developed. We had no zoning in place to do it. Planning board and the select board 10 years ago got together, convinced the owners of the building to change the zoning so we could attract mixed use out there, or a retail component out there. We are right there right now. We need to take advantage of the opportunity that's been presented to us and do, like you said, the best possible use we can out there. I think we all realize that office buildings are, especially big ones, we're not going to see those again. We were extremely lucky for 40 years to be the hub for digital and compact and IBM. I think we've ridden that horse as far as it's going to go.
Let's run out of that horse.
We're going to go down the town. And I think mixed use is what every other town is going to. And I think we have a great opportunity to plan like we did 10 years ago and work with everybody on both boards to get something that I think everyone, residents in Baltimore will proud. All right, I'm done.
You're not done, but
I'm done.
I'm impressed that this is a couple of weeks' work. And because of that, I know it's still evaluating. And, the type of things we'll ultimately be interested in is, well, first of all, when you say mixed use, are you referring to a mix of office and retail?
In that King Street Common
Yeah.
area in the front? Yeah, actually, I mean, and we're actually contemplating possibly residential above as
Okay.
well. Yeah. It's all-
And that's very interesting that, part of the form-based code was we wanted to mix it all. The Tuttle House green space, fantastic. We just recently allowed them to subdivide that, or the owner. Now, did you buy the whole package, or? Okay. And that is great because that space does a lot of the infrastructural work of the whole parking lot area. So, and anyway, so I'm going to reserve my comments for at the ongoing meetings. The fact that you've entered into a purchase and sale is, that's a commitment. And I think we're be committed to make this the highest and best, project we can get. So, and to your point about the big office buildings, they're tearing them down in Westford and building condos.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's something for to think about.
So Sal and team, thank you for being here tonight, and well done in terms of considering everything that we provided to you all, and I would say you're saying the right things. so it's a great start. Everything from housing, because in Littleton we definitely could use a lot more middle market homes, housing units, being able to have the shops and complement what's already at the point and what could potentially be in the common. That's all great to hear. I did want to ask, as we continue to move forward, I know that the community as a whole is pretty excited about this, and so consider how to perhaps collect input from the community as to what they would like to see. Thank you.
great. Thanks, Sam.
I have comments. I also think I'm excited about this. I think the potential of more dense residential is something that we've been talking about a lot in town. Ms. Napoli and I are on the Affordable Housing Trust, and the 40R issue, we have a lack of diversity here in town, of housing diversity that's very important. One thing I guess is just a question, and I know you can't answer it. When I would drive by, when IBM was in full swing, every single parking space in the parking lot had a car in it. And I'm just really curious if you think you can find some tenants for those existing buildings with 1/20th of the parking. I mean, that's...
I would say, I guess, at this stage in planning for that space, we don't really know what it's going to be yet. It might be a space, some mentioned possible robotics as an idea, which you could obviously imagine many fewer employees than were there for IBM in its heyday. But we are planning, in the top right of that graphic, we call it kind of the wing. It's sort of the most remote point from the commons. That is sort of our solution. If we're going to need parking to support more commercial uses, it's a possible area where there's some topography to take advantage of for a possible parking structure. And that would free up the ground space to create that nice village feel that we're trying to do up front, because there's so much parking there today.
Yeah.
And it really dominates the space. To create these green spaces, this walkable environment, you can't have people walking through seats of parking. And so in our mind, the way to address it is if we found the right tenant who required a lot of parking, over there is sort of our solution to that, as we've started with early planning. And we want to preserve the areas closer to the common, closer to the street. That's the visibility of the project that the public will drive by and interface with, for these really nice, high character green spaces that are along King Street.
And that's that back parking lot with the, I think, the basketball court attached to it?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Thank you very much. This is great.
Fred, no.
Sure. So, yeah, so thank you. It's nice to see you all again. Thank you again for coming. So I just wanted to reiterate some of the comments that have been made here tonight. I love this plan. I know you put it together quickly, and I really appreciate it. It certainly fits, I think, with the vision of the community. It checks a lot of boxes for Littleton. It meets what we talked about in our master plan, our housing production plan, the Littleton Common Revitalization Roadmap. It meets all those needs. Littleton is seeing a decline in housing for age groups 18 through 29. This would really, actually 18 through 34, excuse me. This would really meet the needs of that group. Workforce housing is a big need in our community. We have a lot of people who work in Littleton that can't afford to live here. On top of that, we have a senior population that is in need of housing, housing where they can downsize and free up their homes that they don't use anymore, those larger homes, and have a place to go and still remain in Littleton. The whole live, work, play concept is something that we've talked about a lot on the select board and as well as the planning board. This absolutely meets that whole concept, which is very popular, as we all know, if you follow any of the housing studies that have gone on over the past few years at the state level. And it also has a big economic development component to it, which I don't want people to lose sight of. Not only will it attract new businesses to Littleton Common, but it'll also build up the businesses that are already in town. It kind of will build up that whole area, which is something that we've really been talking about for so long. So it's nice to see something like this come before us, and the possibility of seeing all these ideas, concepts, and studies that we've had over the years. The recommendations that have been made to us as elected officials finally come to, the possibility of it finally coming to fruition. So I'm really excited about this project, and I hope that other residents will be as well, and I really look forward to the open dialogue, the willingness to work with us, and be, this is definitely preliminary, and I'm sure there's going to be some changes along the way, but I appreciate the process up to this point, and I'm really excited about this and looking forward. I think we all are, just seeing what happens in the next coming months and years. So thank you.
I just want to open by saying I had some Sal's pizza tonight.
Suck up.
That's a good way of putting the suck up again. Because what I want to point out is that you and I had the opportunity one time to meet with Sal, and as a select person going into a meeting like that, you often wonder, what character are you going to meet? Are you going to meet someone who is concerned only about the company and will leave and won't be part of the community? And I left there with the impression, to be honest, Sal, I was glad I mentioned it because I had no idea you should be so down to earth and be straightforward what you're going to do and what you're going to try to do for the town. And speaking of townspeople, we have things that go on in town, and the planning board goes through this too, but this will be packed with people who are just ready to go right after you. And all the people I've talked to in town so far, they're excited. As far as I can see, maybe that'll change when plans come about. But so far, the concepts that have come forth, everyone seems to be excited because they were afraid, like I was. When IBM moved out, I drive by that every day. I said, what's going to happen to that property? Are we going to be sitting here looking at these buildings in 8 years as they crumble apart like you were talking about? So I think there was a fear there by the town that we would gain nothing. And this came about, and just like Cindy said, it meets all those boxes that we were talking about. And I'm saying to myself, this can't be completely true. And when I first get these drawings, I went like this. And hats off to the planning board for that form-based coding and that was done, that just gives it that atmosphere of being a New England town type of thing. I think that all works into the character of what the people of Littleton are looking for. So, and even the idea of the Tuttle House being kept separate, I think that's tremendous. It's a green space that was put there. It was put there on purpose, and I was afraid maybe you'd be cutting into that. I think that actually leads into that property very, very well. So I'll leave it at that. Hope this all works out for everybody.
I have a comment about the Tattle House, and I just want to work on it as well. The difference with Sal and the Tattle House is that every other developer that's going to be coming before us wanted to break that off and sell it. That's why they came before us to A&R it, so they could get rid of it and not have it as part of this. Sal saw it as an asset, something that should remain with this project. We bought it and keep it. That's the difference. That's the difference we're looking at. Is a local developer who sees the common and sees the interaction of why we kept that green space, as opposed to somebody from Texas who owns a writ who wants to turn it over and break it up and make as much money. That's the difference. That you hit it on the head. That's what we saw when we never saw it the first time. I have one other last thing. When we met you, and then I'm going to call it. You talked about it. I know Gina was back there somewhere. See, when we had talked, you talked about senior housing, hopefully age, the possibility of age-in-place housing, independent living, assisted living, dementia care. I'm hoping that's still on the table that we can talk about as we move forward, because I think that's very important to the residents of the town.
It is, Mark, and it's super important to us because that's just some of the early on conversations we had. So we're receptive to any ideas that, allows this 40-plus acres to be vibrant and exciting, and to be not just an area where some part of it is successful and some part of it is not successful. The success of this project is in its entirety. It's not in sections. And I think that some of the programming that you're describing creates that spectrum of success. You just can't focus on one thing. You create that spectrum. You would be inclusive to all the other programming that we want. And I think together it can be a very strong opportunity there. Separated, I'm not your guy. I'm not your guy if you want to break off the Tuttle House. I saw the Tuttle House and I said, imagine the meetings we could have there collectively in the town. Imagine that small park, the kind of meetings that we can have that interact with the common. So those are the things that we look at.
And I thank you for that. It's good to see you looking at the holistic, everything, the green space, the buildings, everything. Thank you. I'm done. I really am.
That's what he says. Pretty sure Paul's not.
Yeah, well, I would love to echo or repeat everything that's been said on the positive level. I just agree with it all, and I'm enthused about it. But I do think it's worth underscoring again how different the thing, our prospects for this property and its impact on the town could be if we didn't have the Lupoli family and Lupoli Companies before us as the folks that stepped forward and secured or are securing the funding to make this happen. They've been successful with everything they've done, but what we could have been looking at, and allusions have been made to some of the different outfits that, with a lot less interest, have kicked the tires with the town. A lot of people, a lot of development entities, the cookie cutter outfits, national outfits, that care less about Littleton. We honestly, that's what we lived through, for 30 years. I mean, as much as the IBM presence there was a benefit in its big picture, what was lost to the public, I think, but very much appreciated by town board members who had to deal with it, is it was owned by out-of-town real estate investment trust. It was, there were several times where we had to sit around and think of ways where we could figure out how to get a hold of the actual owner because we didn't know who it was. It would jump around from Texas to Atlanta to New York. Now the guy is in the south of France, I believe. Just to be away from that world is so different for such a key property to the town. All of us who participated in the master plan process know that it all starts there and emanates out. And we have all sorts of aspirational things we want to do there, the housing, the economic development, the integration with the common, and to have an outfit walk in the door, have done their homework, already know that's what we wanted. Terrific. So many others didn't do that. But they could see it as a great location for, because of its off the highway location, a truck terminal. Is that what we all want Littleton Common to be? I don't think so, but zoning, present zoning would support a lot of that. So, we're really, we're going to breathe a big sigh of relief when we, when we get past the point where they've secured their ownership of the property and we've secured permitting. I'm very hopeful. I know there'll be bumps in the road, there always are, but this is the, at the starting gates, about the best of all possible worlds we could anticipate for a way to actually envision and make real the master plan that we put so much time and faith into. And a final thought on that too, it was mentioned earlier, but not insignificant. Those of us who have pushed the sewer project along have known that we've excised that property out of it because the previous owners had no interest in it. They didn't care that their septic system, which was independent of the town, was in a state of degradation that it was a threat to our water supplies and all the rest of it. But Sal and his team, they want to embrace that sewer project and wholeheartedly, and fortunately they have a working relationship with the state agencies that are going to be critical to us to get MassWorks grants and other funding to make this happen, and the capacity that this site would contribute to it. It's wonderful. We might be in a position as soon as this fall town meeting to see a couple of those goals coincidentally on our warrant and be able to achieve so much that makes reality out of our hopes for this town, by voting the opportunity to do that. So anyway, I'm just enthusiastic about the opportunity here, but I'm sure there are people in the audience that also want to.
To Paul's point, and we did have those calls. We had a call from one developer that wanted to put 3 warehouses and park about 150 tractor-trailer trucks, and he gave us a nice plan, and I said, gee, this is perfect, thank you. This is example A of what we don't want in Littleton.
Or elsewhere.
Or elsewhere. So, but they were interested, and certainly it's up to the boards, but that's not what the comment, that's not what that site really needs. So we did have those calls though, and we vetted those, and we vetted still some of the big REITs that were still interested in just having this part of their portfolio. They don't even know what Littleton is. The good thing again is being that local developer, I have Sal on my cell phone, and we've spoken a number of times throughout this process, and it's great to have that instead of 5 years ago when we were trying to contact Hudson Properties to partner with us with the sewer project. To Paul's point, again, it was impossible. It was impossible to get a hold of them. They were just not interested in anything that we had to say. Shame on them, because if they partnered with us and we did have sewer, that property may have went for $45 million instead of the price it is today. So, but the point that we have a local developer, I think, is just a tremendous opportunity for the town to get what they're looking for. And Sal certainly is listening to what the boards have passed on of what Littleton wants.
Just to capitalize on that, one of the first things that the boards and some of the individuals in this room talk about is the importance of sewer. Not only the importance of sewer to activate it, but the importance of sewer to have a paying customer at the end. Right? And I think what this project gives us all an opportunity is A, to contribute immediately, and we've already committed to you. We stand by our commitment to you to create a very large commitment into the sewer program. And then to be able to have a paying customer immediately, so that burden doesn't fall on everyone else in the town. And we accept some of that burden as a result of this. So I'm perfectly proud of the fact that we are committed to the numbers that we've discussed. And we're going to find a way to get it done. We're going to find a way to get it done. And I think that will help kickstart a huge savings to the town of Littleton and give us an opportunity to be incredibly successful over there, because as this project starts to materialize, what's so critical in your town for a project of this size is sewer, right? When these new companies come in, and these new opportunities, today it's a lot of life sciences that we're trying to attract, and doctors to come in there. Sewer capacity is important, and we've already lost conversations that when people hear there's no sewer over there, they're really not interested. So to your point that it's already zoned for, it'd be incredibly challenging to say no to what this site is zoned for, whether it's trucking or distribution because of the access to highway. I think we've got a great opportunity to partner with a commitment from the Lupoli Companies and a commitment from the state of Massachusetts. If we're able to explain ourselves and articulate ourselves, I think they'll be incredibly excited about what this community is looking to do over there. And that's really what the state does, right? The state looks at something and they say, in order for us to be a part of this at the next level, what's in it for us? What's in it for the state? And the state's going to get a lot of job creation, they're going to get a lot of taxes and different opportunities, they're going to be able to create and support revenue for your town. And I just think it's a win-win when we talk about sewer, sir.
And that shouldn't be undervalued, Sal, because right now with our sewer system, we are the only users, or the biggest user. And certainly that means the financial burden is on the ratepayers. Ultimately, it's the taxpayers of Littleton. You being that partnership, you pick up most of that burden of that cost. So that makes the project even that much more financially doable for the town. So your commitment to partner with us is important, but thank you for that.
Before I open it up, I just want to kind of wrap it up a little bit. One of the key words that Sal's used on a couple of occasions is that Lupoli Companies listens. And I think when we sat down, I said that was one of the biggest things my father said. He said, you get two ears and one mouth. Use them in proportion. And it's become evident to me that that's exactly kind of the mantra that you operate under. We as a town have listened as well. We've developed a master plan. We've got a lot of visioning that's going on and has gone on and is continuing to go on. We're executing on many of those plans, and to potentially create a partnership with a developer that has a similar vision, and it is part of the fabric of what your organization is, and I think it would mesh well with our organization in our community. So it is a very exciting time. I look forward to that partnership, listening to one another, and I'll wake up Corral now, get the ball over the goal line. We do have a number of people in the room that are very involved in that much of our visioning, and I would like to open it up. We do, I don't know, we've got Nick Waller's the executive director of our light and water and sewer. If you have any comments, Nick, I'm not putting you on the spot, you don't have to say anything, but you are here, and we were talking about sewer, but certainly electricity and water is also a big part of a project like this.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone kind of hit on it. With DEC and IBM, it held our rates down, electric rates down for a long time, which allowed us to build probably the best light and water departments in Commonwealth. I'm fortunate to work there 20 years. Scotty Larson, commissioner, now worked there 33 years. It's because of partnerships like that. When IBM left, that was a big loss. They left without notice. They left in December, and load dropped off, and here we are. It's happened everywhere. In Cisco, Roxborough, same thing. But I have a commitment letter in the car that you can sign for sewer, so I'd love to have it. It's one of the most complicated projects this community is dealt with, yeah. It's hard to do a sewer project in the climate without this parcel connected. So it's great that we hear that partnerships. I think we need it. But moving forward, the town's had great foresight throughout, I don't know, Paul, 15 years to work on this project. Whether it started off as conservation, water protection, conservation. That's a zone 2 of our aquifer. It's a very important area for our community. The whole common is. That's kind of how it started. the discharge site that we're developing, the town had the foresight to commit to building out to the full capacity of that site. They didn't know why, they just knew at some point some project would come along and they wanted to support that. And, this parcel would be key in developing that in our sewer project. So that's great to hear. On the way out, I'll have you sign that letter.
Thanks, Nick. There's a number of other people, and if anybody wants to be heard, please just raise your hand, and I'll recognize you. Mr. Sanders, if you just, maybe you might want to come out this way so we can get you on camera, and just, your name and address would be great.
George A. Sanders, 672 Great Road, here in Littleton. Mr. Chairman, it's a great pleasure to be back in this chamber again. I want to thank the prospect here of 550 King Street there. What I've heard so far has been great, but I want to direct what I have to say right now to the planning board and to the select board, because it's crucial. I'm a senior in this town, and we seniors pay our tax share in this town. When it comes to the TIF, the tax incentive finance that you gave to IBM, I have concern about that. Did they fulfill the obligation that we voted at the town meeting and gave them our tax money? If they haven't fulfilled that commitment, the town needs to do something about it. We're not in the business as taxpayers to give away money to a corporation as large as IBM. And I'm not sure where this proposed company that's wanting to come in now is going to ask for a TIF. I'm not sure, but I think that the town people has been very great to companies that came in to do business in Littleton and asked for, we trust them to do what they say that they're going to do with the agreement that the town signs with them. We need to have better tracking means of letting the people know that the obligation is being carried out. I remember when Evergreen was over Devon's there, the state gave them such a great incentive there, they stayed for a few years, packed up and left. The state went after them, because that's money from the people that is being given to a corporation that has nothing but moolah, that's money. And I feel as a taxpayer in this town, I'm for helping any business that wants to come into town and wants to do business, as long as they are going to conform and do what the boards ask them to do. Select board, the planning, health board, etc. I have no problem with that. But you need to make sure that if we give them an incentive, first off, I think 20 years that we gave to IBM was definitely too long of giving away money to them. So we need to look at the number of years that we're going to give a TIF. Because when it goes to the town meeting, you're asking the people to vote and give this corporation our money that which they should be paying, and give us less because they come in and make promises that they're going to hire X people, they're going to create this, they're going to do this and do that. We need to keep the eye on the ball, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. I would want to address as well. To directly answer your question at kind of a high level, as soon as we found out about IBM vacating the property, Mr. Sanders, we started digging into that. Council's on it, and I'm not going to give you the meat and potatoes of it right now, but it is something that is a work in progress, and we're looking at whether or not the commitment from the TIF were met, which it appears in most part it was. but we're trying to look at what the return on investment was, what, if anything, we can go after. You know, we're definitely looking at that right now. One thing I did jot down though is, I think it would be a good exercise for us, along with, you know, maybe the treasurer and the assessor and the town administrator, to look into the other TIFs that are out there. I can speak for Patriot Beverage. We gave a small TIF to try to get them up and running, and I've personally stayed in very close contact with them. The number of jobs they've created are well beyond what they committed to, so it is something that we should kind of give a report card back to the town, whether it's in the annual report or something like that. I like that idea. I've got 2 stars next to it, so it is something that I'm going to take on personally to try to determine where we're at with our TIFs. Because
Well, a third
I'm a
one
taxpayer
because
too.
I'm gonna stay on
A
top.
third star. Matthew put one too. It's a 4-star project now.
There's none on the table for this proposal.
Right, if I may.
Yeah, absolutely, please do that.
So it seems in all the conversations that I've been talking to Sal for a number of months, the word TIF has never come out of his mouth. He's not, if anything, he wants to bring to the community, so we haven't even discussed that. Never came out of his mouth. We haven't discussed it, so just want you to know. And to Chuck's point, we are looking into the IBM TIF.
Well, that's good. If he wants to do that, I'm for it as long as we agree, you know. That's not a problem.
Anybody else? Questions, comments? Mr. Perrella?
Yeah, Chuck, Tom Perrell, 7 Cobb Lane. FinCom, other FinCom members here, if you're wearing a mask. But to George's point, it's a great point. All the better reason why having Sal and his team come in, because it's long term. You know, we don't have a fly-by-night big corporation that's going to come in and, you know, under the cover of night, like the, you know, Baltimore Colts, you know, take off and head to, or rather Indianapolis, I'm sorry, and head off to Baltimore. That's point number 1. Point number 2, as it relates to the sewer, you know, our biggest concern as FinCom is that the town's going to be our biggest customer. And so, you know, the town's going to bear the burden of picking up the tab. And knowing that, you know, Sal and his team are coming in, they're going to create something that will use the sewer. And I'm a huge proponent of the sewer because, you know, knowing, personally knowing the Northern Bank and Trust folks and knowing what they want to do in the common, and they're waiting. You know, they're ready to go. The day the sewer goes live, I mean, we're going to see shovels on the ground. We're going to see the town is going to change for the better forever once that sewer goes in. And knowing that Sal and his team are going to come in and do a project like this, it's incredible. So just, you know, my 2 cents.
Thanks, Tom. Jerry, I didn't give you an opportunity to speak. I know if you had anything you wanted to add.
Not really at this time. I think that, you know, Sal does a great job summarizing what our vision is and who we are, and Rick does an unbelievable job giving a presentation about our vision for the site. I will say that, you know, one of the reasons we're here is that we saw this as an opportunity to really revitalize the common. And that is a very special piece of property, and it's the front door off of the highway. And I think that we're very sensitive to that, and we're very thoughtful when we approach our master plan. And so we like a collaborative approach, as you've all seen, and we want everyone, it's an inclusion network. We're very inclusionary, so everyone's input and feedback is important because we want this to be a win-win for both sides. And that's the way, honestly, we've approached every project. And, you know, we have legacy projects that are 3.2 million square feet and keep growing to 600,000 square feet. So it's remarkable. I think that, as Sal mentioned, a lot of people do not realize how big we are. We have a very small team, and we're very fluid, and we adapt to things quickly, and I think that's an advantage for the community.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Rochelle DuPont. I live on Harwood Avenue, and I am working with the Bicycle and Pedestrian Access Committee. I am super excited to have heard the word walkability so many times tonight. I have two questions you might not be able to answer at this point, and also an observation. So right now in front of King Street, there's a sidewalk and a bike lane. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about how that's going to change. And then I'm just super curious about the specifics of potentially connecting the point and what we call the IBM property.
Right.
And then my observation is, so I do ride my bike from my house to the point. I did it more before all of the businesses were in there. At this point, it's a little scary. So I feel like we have an opportunity with this project to do a better job. So I wanted to let you know that our committee exists, and we would really love to talk with you about that.
Fabulous, fabulous. Yes, we see this as a wonderful property to create opportunity for pedestrian connections and for bike connections. Obviously, it could go around the whole perimeter. Green space is very important to us, and I think Rick can speak a little bit to the bike path.
Yeah, I mean, one thing we didn't get to, because we was trying not to go too deep into the details, but we envisioned sort of a recreational path that sort of weaves through the property, provide walking trail opportunities. The interconnection between these sort of four distinct zones is really important to its success, like Sal alluded to. Under no circumstances would we be proposing to remove bike lanes on King Street. If anything, we'd be trying to invite them in to take advantage of these, this King Street common front door presence. We know the value of walkable communities, and it would be a shame to give that up. So look forward to working together.
Mr. Rizzo?
Yeah, I just want to add to that. Just don't want to miss it.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Rizzo, had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So just as far as the connection to the point in this development, so when the point was first created, MassDOT recognized that bridge is actually too narrow. It's something that I brought up with Sal too, that if we now that this comes to fruition, we would certainly be going back to MassDOT and say, remember when you said this, now we need to make that a wider bridge, sidewalks on both sides, and the bike path. So it's certainly something that's in the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's 19 over 495.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Shannon McNulty. I live at 29 Arnies Drive, and I'm a new member of the Economic Development Committee. I guess an elephant for me is that just driving through the point, going over the border into Groton, and seeing a lot of the vacant businesses. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to how you know that this retail outfit, which the whole thing sounds so exciting to me, but how we're not going to be looking at another grouping of businesses that aren't occupied, because I think that would be a big concern to our community.
So that's a great question. Thank you very much. So imagine, and I say this with utmost respect of some of these gateway cities. Imagine going to some of the most challenged cities in the state and maybe in the country and turning blight into light. Like, how do you convince people to go to the poorest city in the state? Because that's what Lawrence is, respectfully speaking. And Lawrence is no better than Littleton, and Littleton is no better than any other vibrant community that cares and has passionate people in the community. So how do you get people to go there? I'll tell you how you get people to go there. You give them an opportunity to be successful, you allow them to grow, you create a long-term relationship with those people. If you look at the success of Riverwalk, how did you go from buildings that had no roof on it, right? How do you go to buildings that people were living in the buildings? How do you do that to the most successful project in the state when you talk about 5,000 people live there and it's home to some of the biggest companies in the world, really in the world? And you know how we did it? We did it 500 square feet at a time. We did it 1,000 square feet at a time. We respectfully weren't looking for the ideas. That was like a big no for me, because I know and I've seen developments crater because this big outfit came in. They were promised a lot of TIFs, a lot of programming. They didn't hit their mark and they exited. And when they exited, everything cratered because of the scale of that. We went the other way. We focused on small business and small entrepreneurs. We focused on an entrepreneur going from 2,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet. Right? We go focus on that small entrepreneur going from 5 people to 10 people. And how do we help them? So I think in order to fully answer your question, I think the town of Littleton, and certainly through our experience, and we're just an entrepreneur, we're just a development company, we do not have your solution, but if you were to ask us, we would say focus on the small business, focus on helping those people grow. And if they grow, maybe you could develop something like all of our other sites, like Lawrence, which 35% of the growth of the largest mixed-use project in the state came from within, right? Those small entrepreneurs that grew. So I think that's how you do it. I'm not against big businesses, right? I'm not against Big Blue, IBM, but do you see what happens when it's just one tenant? They crater, and then all of a sudden you have like this panic because now the vultures are circling and they're saying, you know, what can I put there, that zone that you can't stop me from putting there? And I think small business is the way to go in longevity. We started in Lawrence, and I went in front of the boards, and this is documented, you know. I went in front of the boards, and it's so serendipitous. This gentleman right here, Brian O'Connor, he was one of my first tenants. I actually hired Brian because I had this idea to create a mixed-use project. There wasn't even a term back then, mixed use. I called it a mall of businesses. And Brian said, you know, Sal, not only do I believe in you and believe in this concept, he was one of the first tenants to move there. And today, that small entrepreneur that was 3 people, cube 3 individuals in 1,200 square feet, Brian now, I'm so proud of him, Brian has a whole floor at Riverwalk, and I think you're probably one of the fastest growing architects in the country, and his headquarters is in Massachusetts. Brian, if you could elaborate on that.
No, I agree with Sal. I mean, we do a lot of planning, not only locally but around the country. And I think, you know, having a site like this, you have to slow down and create the vision. And I think that's one of the things that Sal and the team do well. And so finding and refining the vision and making sure it's part of the community is really what we're here to do. And, you know, we didn't want to come collectively with plans that are done. That doesn't help you guys. It's not inclusive. And so it's a framework, and we all kind of build on the framework together, and I think that's how it works.
Thank you. Yeah, I would just say that please let the Economic Development Committee know how we might be a part of that, because it all sounds very exciting.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for the shout out for EDC.
No problem. Anytime.
She's a plant. Anybody else? Yeah, please.
Yeah, hi, I'm Linda Stein. I'm on the Littleton Historical Commission. I just want to reiterate, our commission's very happy to hear that you will keep the Tuttle House. We were nervous that you might want to wipe it out, so thank you for that. And there's a pear orchard, part of the pear orchard is there. We hope that you'll keep that too. And if there's any way that we can help our commission can help make the connection between the historical significance of the Tuttle House and as a gateway to the rest of the revitalization of the Common, we'd be happy to work with you.
Sure. So just to Sal mentioned, one of the things that we would point out is we have an amazing track record, and we're celebrated as one of the biggest developers within the historic preservation world. We've won 2 big awards, the Songus Award for Preservation. We've won twice at 2 different projects. And so I think that we've had the ability, I mean, we've restored one of the largest historic mill buildings really in the whole country, is a building that my office sits in, and it's 1.2 million square feet. So we embrace historic revitalization and restoration, and I think that we're probably one of the groups that does the most of it. So we do value historic properties, and we love to talk about the history and the story because we feel like that brings identity to the sites that we develop. And really, people who come through appreciate it, they love it. You know, in Lawrence at the mills, they were textile mills. And I can't tell you how many people will come up to us, and Sal especially, and just talk about how their grandparents worked there or their mother worked there in the mills. And, you know, it's so nice to bridge that gap and to really celebrate what started certain places. So we are wholeheartedly dedicated to historic preservation.
And that was evident too in Lowell, with the restoration, keeping that old door and where the trains used to pull into. It was pretty amazing, and they really Sal, in each floor had the theme of what was going on in town and in that building, and did a great job. It was something that was very impactful to us, and it really excited us even more so about Sal's project.
And to that point, at the Comfort Bedding Mill, you know, that lay dormant and underutilized for decades. And so Sal, after 2 years of working with the ownership, convinced them that he was the person to really revitalize that building. And so one of the things we have there that is truly unique is every floor is dedicated to one of the specific well-known people who grew up in Lowell. So like there's a floor that's dedicated to Betty Davis, and there's another one that's Jack Kerouac. So, you know, we had a lot of fun with that. And it tells a story and it engages the people who are coming through.
What about Ed McMahon?
On that note. Please.
Hi, my name is Sven Heisted, and I'm an owner's representative for 410 Great Road. The mill building, you know, up around the corner there on the corner of Great Road, and just across the street, actually, from this project. And I wanted to just say a couple things. One is, as a person that does a lot of planning in different towns, it's very impressive, quite frankly, the vision that Littleton has had for the town in general, and specifically for the Littleton Common area. Most towns you go into are kind of like, hey, not in my town, you know, what it is what it is, and we don't want to touch anything. And I think that's short-sighted for a lot of towns that take that approach. And I just commend the town for having the determination to go through the process of, you know, advancing suggestions and community input and exploring options to help revitalize the town. And that's a fantastic thing, and a real kudos to you guys. Specifically with that, I think two key things you've done that really are magical. One is the sewer is one of them, and the other is in the form-based code, and in the zoning in general, is allowing greater density of land use, because density allows developers to make things happen that they can't do without density. And when you allow that and when you facilitate that, it makes better use and higher use. You're using the term highest and best use. That's a very smart thing for the town to encourage, is highest and best use. And one of the simple way to say that is density. So I would keep that personally in this suggestion to facilitate that whenever you can, you know, because that helps Sal do what he needs to do to help do what everybody wants to have happen there. The other two quick things, just one other quick thing, I guess. You guys obviously have met Sal. I've never met Sal in my life, and I don't know anything about him. But I do have a personal friend that works for him recently, and every time I talk to him, he just can't say how great the company is and how happy he is to be there. So clearly you have a unique person and unique organization. And I see the streetscape there, and it looks like it came straight out of your planning book. You know, so I commend them for being wise to be sensitive to what you're looking for and trying to give it to you. I mean, I think that's incredibly fortunate to have somebody that listens that well, you know, this early in the process. So we support what you're doing and encourage the project and hope it turns out to be a great success.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Great. All right. Anybody else want to be heard? All right. You guys have any closing arguments? Anything? Before we sentence? Before sentencing, you know.
On behalf of my family, my wife and my daughter, Mary, my son Sal Jr., Jerry, Lynn, and my architectural team and my engineering team, I just want to thank you for this opportunity. And we hope you feel that over this past several months, You've gone above and beyond just communication, understanding and listening to what you say, from memory care to assisted living to elderly. We want to put everything on the table to workforce housing, to creating jobs, creating support for small entrepreneurs, connecting them to a walkable program over there that brings a point into this too. I think it's super important that we continue to support the point. But as a result of COVID, I look at that hotel and I just grind my teeth when I drive by because I know how empty that hotel is and how important it was to the point. And I just think an opportunity like this, we can also be and play off each other and support a big investment that the town made by creating more people there, different businesses and smaller businesses. So I just think this is an opportunity without going deep into the town where you have to say, geez, I lived on a quiet street, now look at it. This is literally if you could, kind of create a canvas or a painting and you wanted to say, I want to bring an opportunity in industry and new jobs or different kinds of programming. I don't know if you could kind of envision a better site than what you have in your community at this 41, 42 acre site. So I just want to tell you how much we appreciate it. We're listening. This is what we do. Do some homework, look into our background. We've been around for 30 years, but some of our projects we've been around for 20 plus years. As I alluded to, I went in front of city council one time in Florence. I was 37 years old. And they asked me, why are you making such an investment in the city of Lawrence? And nobody's done this in the past 40 years. And don't you understand the history of it? And I said, with all due respect, history needs to go on right where it is. You need to learn from it, but if everybody dwelled on the history, nothing would get done in the future. No great ideas would come from it. So that idea that I told them, as a family, we explained that to them. They asked me, how long is it going to take? I said, I need about 20 years. And they laughed at me, just like you guys are now. And the great part about it is, with all due respect, this year is our 20th year over there in Lawrence, and we are finally at the tail end of the entire project as far as renovating 3.6 million square feet. Just to let you know, these buildings, if you stand them up, one is as tall as the Prudential Building, the other one is as tall as the Empire State Building, and the third building would be the 10th tallest building in the world if you just stood it up. So these are incredibly challenging projects that had to have outside the box thinking, but we would never be there without the cooperation of boards like this. And when you're a developer, you run to boards like this. When you're a developer of means and you can do big projects, you choose to go into communities that embrace you. Communities that don't want to embrace us, I respectfully shake their hands as a family member, as a representative of my organization, and we want to move on to a community that embraces us. We don't want to disappoint anyone if anyone disappointed us. So we appreciate everything. My last plug, Sal's Pizza. The town and the gas station over there. The gas station. Love it. Thank you very much.
Free sample. That's at the public input session.
Yeah.
Pizza.
My wife and I moved to Lowell. We lived in the Mass Mills in Lowell 21 years ago now. And we drove down from New Hampshire where we lived, and the first meal we ever had was Sal's Pizza. And I remember sitting on the living room floor and saying, wow, I think we picked the right state. So thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Very much appreciate it. Thank you to the planning board. Stay engaged. Stay engaged. Thank you all.
Nice to meet you. Yeah, we'd like